Hi, I was asked to make a quick little tutorial on how to make decal eyes, and yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So, here you see the materials we're gonna need. First of all, you're gonna need your decal eyes. Am I in frame? I am in frame, yes. They're printed on decal paper, so something like this. And you can buy that paper on the internet, on Amazon or something. And it's important that you coat the paper after printing with acrylic clear spray. So a clear coat essential. I have no idea what I even use. Just something from the hardware store. It's important that it's acrylic based and that you do several coats. So I like to do 2 medium strength coats and I let them dry for 2 hours each. And the last one is a very thick coat of acrylic clear lacquer. And I let that dry basically overnight. And then the paper is safe to touch. You're gonna have to experiment with that. That is the hard part, finding the right paper for you and finding the right acrylic spray for you, because if you use too little, it's gonna bleed. If you use too much, it might get really rigid. But the rigidness is not so much of a problem because we're going to use chemicals. Yeah, but we'll get to that later. So we have our eyes. I'm going to cut them out later. You need to have your eye bases. So you have the option of what I'm using. These are high dome. You see, they're a bit more curved than, for example, what I use for my sticker eyes. For sticker eyes, I use something that is flatter and less curved in comparison. And personally, I use my own eyes. I pour those myself. So these are from epoxy, and I have my own forms. But you can just as much use commercially bought eye bases. I bought these off from Taobao. They're really cheap, and they work just as fine. The only difference is the shape, and that mine have a bit of a rough surface, while these have a really smooth surface. But it works just as fine. I personally like to use more curved surfaces for decal eyes because that's essentially the point why you make decal eyes in the first place. Because with sticker eyes, you use something more flat because the sticker needs a flatter surface to adhere to. I personally, for my sticker eyes, I use vinyl paper, and it adheres perfectly well and it lies completely flat on there and you can just resin over it and done. But with decal eyes, you essentially, the big good part of decal eyes is that you can adhere them to a more curved surface, and that's exactly why we make decal eyes, because otherwise I just make sticker eyes. But with some doll heads, it looks better if you have a more curved surface because it sits better in the eye, and that's why we make decal eyes. So I personally like to use these eye bases. I personally pour, and they're really good. But it's, yeah, you can just get some of Taobao, and they're perfect. What else do we need? We need some water, of course, because they're water decal stickers. We need some tweezers, just something to hold the decal and get it out. I personally like to use a little stick with some blue tack on, just so I can stick the eye on there. It's more used for me personally when I do resin on top, so I can just dip it in and done. But like this, it holds still, you know? It's not gonna go anywhere. You're gonna need a Q-tip. First of all, to soak off the water, and also to get rid of any folds that are on the surface of the decal. And I personally also like to use just a tiny silicone brush with a flat edge on the front. It's also nice for removing the folds of the decal, but a Q-tip is gonna do just fine. Since we'll be working with chemicals, we are using gloves. I use just regular old nitrile gloves from my workplace, but I'm gonna guess latex is gonna be fine as well. The chemical we're going to use today is Mr. Mark Softer. So mine has German on it because I am from Germany, but it is technically bought from Japan. And this is to make the decal soft. So first we're going to apply the decal on top and remove most of the water so it adheres. And then we're going to put this on top and start smoothing out the folds, because without this you're going to get folds. I know from other artists that some use not Mr. Mark Softer, but Mr. Mark Setter, which is a decal glue. So instead of first gluing it on and then adhering a softer and softening it out, others like to use a glue on the base and just glue the decal in place. So instead of like chemically softening it up so it will stretch over the surface, they basically force it in place. Both is fine. Both works perfectly well, I think. I use Mr. Mark Softer because that's what I have at home. And what we're also gonna need is just a regular old paper towel, because we're gonna be working with water. It's gonna get a little messy. Okay, I'm gonna take a second to pause just to cut out my eyes. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. I've cut out my eye and I'm ready to go. With decal eyes, you can leave a gap on the sides. So for example, if you want to do a gradient from your design that goes out, that's totally fine. And you don't have to cut super close. Like with sticker eyes, you really need to get to the edge because you're going to see the edge if you don't cut it away. With decal eyes, because it's so thin, you're not really gonna notice it. So you can totally leave an edge like that, and you're also kind of recommended to do that because the ink won't run as much. For me personally, my ink is extremely runny on this paper, so an edge is good for me. We're just gonna plop this into our water. Yeah, we don't need the gloves yet. I like to just leave it in there a little, but also kind of submerge it a little bit. And that's already good enough. We can fish it out already. Remove some of the water. So I like to take it and just, I'm gonna use the Q-tip, I think. Slide it right off. It's gonna be a little bit of an annoying thing because these decals love to do warping. But you're just gonna slide it right on top. This part here, we don't need anymore. So we're just gonna chuck it. And now we have the decal sitting on the eye. Now comes the fun part with the Q-tip, which is positioning but also removing the water. So we're just gonna start. Am I in frame? Yes, I am. We're just gonna slide it around to be somewhat in center, and then what I like to do, a little bit criminal, just use a towel. We're not really centered here. You know what? Just press it on. You don't want to adhere today, do you, huh? Come on, buddy. Just tap, tap, tap away. Soak up as much water as you can. Now it's kind of on there, you see, but it's like super warped and there's so many folds, and that's because the decal just can't lie flat on the surface because the decal was printed flat, but this surface is curved, so it's just not gonna work out easily. And that's what we have Mr. Mark Softer for, because this softens the decal and helps it lie in place. So we're gonna put on some gloves. At least I'd recommend you put on gloves, because I'm not sure what's in that stuff. It says you should avoid skin contact, so better safe than sorry. We don't need our water anymore, so let's set that aside. We don't need this. We're gonna need these two. But first of all, we need Mr. Mark Softer. So we open it up. It comes with the brush, and we just dab it onto the surface. Now you see, the decal isn't really staying in place. So we just nudge it a bit to be in the right spot. And we'll just let this soak for a moment or two before we start working on it. So the Mr. Mark Softer can do its job of softening up the material. You might need to do 2 or 3 appliances depending on how thick the acrylic coat you have on top of your decal. It also depends on the paper you have. It's gonna depend on a lot of things, but it's not a really big deal. So we've given it a moment. Then let's start smoothing out the folds. I like to just start on one edge and then work my way around slowly. Like you're just gonna work on the edge and smooth out those folds. Just very, very, very light pressure. We're avoiding moving the decal. We're just doing very light pressure. Like we're just stroking, just petting it very lightly. You're gonna want a very bright light for this, so you can see the folds on the edge. Like a Q-tip is totally fine for this, it works really well. Same with a silicone brush. Like this also works just as well. It really depends on what you like to use or what you have at home. Like you don't need to buy anything new for this. You see it's starting to not show those big folds anymore. They're a lot smaller now. Just like that, we just keep working on it. Okay, in my case, I'm going to apply another layer of Mrs. Mark Softer because I'm seeing on this edge here that there's still some small folds that are a bit stubborn, so I'm going to soften it up just a tiny bit more. I'm happy with how it looks on this side, so I only applied on this edge. And as always, we're just gonna let it sit for a moment, let it marinate for a bit. And then we're just slowly going to start petting our decal back onto our eye again. Okay. And just like this, we have a decal applied without any folds on the edges. And that's the whole process. It's really easy. You're just going to let this, as it is, dry for Mr. Marksofter doesn't say anything, so you just let it dry according to your paper. Your paper is going to tell you, let it dry for 2 hours, let it dry for 5 hours, let it dry for a day. That's just basically how long you're going to let it dry. And then it's safe to touch. I have some I made last night, and you can see I can rub them, they're fine. I'd still coat it with something just to make sure that it's really staying on there. Because like this, you can scratch it and it's gonna come off eventually. So I'd recommend using, if you like the matte look of this, I'd recommend using a matte clear coat. So just something you use in like making sculptures, like crafting stuff. That's gonna be fine. And if you want it glossy, you can either use a glossy top coat or just use UV resin. That's gonna be the easiest way. You just do the regular dip in UV resin, let it coat the surface, and then just cure. And that's the whole ordeal. Thanks for watching.